Hello, viewers. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us on the Left, Right, Center podcast, where we talk about politics from all sides of the aisle and still get along at the end of the day. So, my pleasure to be the one introducing us today and kicking it off. I'm Chris Scott. And if everyone else wants to introduce yourself, go for it.
I'm Nathan Bayak. Nice to see everybody again. It was a nice day today, and I think it's going to be a great conversation tonight.
Hey, I'm Tim. Sorry for my lack of video. This may be the case for a couple weeks. I just moved to no internet, so doing what we can do. Look forward to the conversation. Yeah, I'm paying. It's $4,500 to get a drop run out to my house, so we're in the middle of that, but it can take up to 60 days. So, I'm looking forward to the conversation though.
Right. And then it looks like on top of that, we might be having internet issues here with the producer and myself. So if the video's choppy, hey. You made your bed, lay in it. You're with us. This is what you get. All right, so a little bit with the format tonight. So we're going to be doing two main topics tonight. We're going to have a little snafflazzle on abortion. We're going to go back and forth on that. You might be interested to find that we don't actually line up party-wise. I believe me and Tim actually switch a little bit, but we'll get into that. And then later we'll get into a little bit of a primer on China. What the issues are with that, how all of that developed, and how we move forward with that whole situation. So, should be a fun show tonight. But first, let's do news and memes.
I can go first if you guys want.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So to keep consistent with the topic of our evening, with 1 second in terms of China and. You know what? It overlaps in human rights as well. So give me 1 quick second.
Yep.
It's being a little funny because it wants to be that way, because that's what happens when you volunteer first. I was like, all right, I'm ready, guys. And then it's like, nope, big L. All right, so here we go. So China, Russia, and Saudi Arabia.
Oh my God, yeah.
Joined the UN Human Rights Council.
Okay, so
like Dylan Roof, who shot up that black church, might as well join
seriously
the ACLU.
Right? Yeah, or like a gun control lobbyist group or something like that.
Like, are you kidding me? Are you actually kidding me? Like Saudi Arabia, what just butchered the Washington Post journalist? You literally have China just literally committing genocide. Russia,
which we'll get into.
Russia's just a humanitarian nightmare, regardless of whatever genocide they're doing.
Russia just tried assassinating
Navalny.
Yes, thank you. I was going to say a different name, and I don't know where it comes from, but it is Russian. So
the only person that has ever tried to run against Vladimir Putin seriously has attempted murder by poisoning. Like the dude's already. You know what's crazy too. Just speaking of Navalny, he has already taken some serious battle wounds. One time he was running for president, and they literally he's blind in one eye because officers beat him. Just like he's literally I think they actually took out his eye, and it's a fake eye. Like this dude is, and he's a wealthy guy. Like he's just trying to it's like someone needs to challenge Putin. He's like Captain America, but Captain Russia. Like it's crazy.
I always wonder about that. Like, I mean, the polls have to be rigged, so
they're not
how do you even win? They're not?
No, they're absolutely accurate. The problem is there's no apparatus for other people to compete against Putin. So his approval ratings stay high because he's the only person that has a serious chance of being reelected. Also, the reality is Putin has done a lot of favorable things, nationalizing one of the oil companies, cracking down on some oligarchs, even though 99% of oligarchs are still alive and well. So people in Russia actually do like Putin, but also there's no option to like anybody else. You can't like anyone else.
Right. So yeah, it's kind of funny. I was in the Navy, and so we had a woman join our work center. The terminology. We had a woman join our work center, and she was actually born and lived in Russia for, I forget, 10 years or something like that. But I asked her, I said, why, what do you guys think of Putin? Like, what's going on with that? Why is he still in power? And this was back before I knew very much about it at all. And I was surprised when she was like, "Oh, well, actually, we do kind of like him." Like, in my mind, I'm growing up as an American. I'm like, okay, presidents are the greatest thing in the world. America's the only one doing it right, and like dictators are all bad and they're oppressing all their people, and they keep them under their evil thumb. So I was very surprised to find out that Putin is actually pretty popular.
When you think about it, though, it's like those dictators, right? Like they the average person is not explicitly impacted by a dictator. I mean, they are and they're not, right? When you're looking at Putin, it's like, yes, political opponents are murdered, and there's like groups of people who are prosecuted and oppressed, but the vast majority of Russians aren't really. They're probably doing better off under Putin than they did. Definitely doing better off than Boris Yeltsin. So it's like for them, they're like, hell yeah, they're like they're not starving anymore. At least, I mean, they're starving half as much as they were before, at least.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly going to be freer than it was in the USSR, but they have a pretty stagnant country. I actually have a chart for that later, but it has to do with China. I just had Russia in there by happenstance. But all right, so I've got a story, unless Tim, you didn't get me any of your links, so I don't know if we're going to be able to do any of that.
No, we're good, man. I don't have any news for this week.
All right, cool. We'll just bounce between me and Chris for now then. So here's what I got for you. So today, Amy Coney Barrett I think it might have been yesterday. So yesterday, Amy Coney Barrett, in her judicial hearing, right here, this woman, used the term sexual preference in some sort of response to a senator. Chris, did you hear about this?
You know what? To be honest, I'm very guilty of not having followed the Supreme Court nomination proceedings as much as I wish I would.
It's not a gotcha. I didn't know if I was leaning into something you'd already heard about. So
I love to hear it.
Tim, you did? You heard about this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Amy Coney Barrett is a nominee for the Supreme Court. She's in the Senate right now. She's going through hearings, which means senators get to ask her all sorts of pointed and uncomfortable questions. She used an answer, the term sexual preference in one of her answers, and this was excoriated by the senator from Hawaii, Mazie Hirono, who said that sexual preference is actually offensive. Right, and in that self, that's sort of like the cultural stories I listen to every day.
That's the quote.
What's that?
She said that that's word for word the quote she said?
Nope, not word for word. I don't have her quote up because it wasn't the actual story that I was going to talk about. We can if you want to pull that article up while I'm talking about the rest of this, we can see what the exact context was.
Down, but keep going.
Yep. So the actual story that I wanted to get to was that Merriam-Webster Dictionary adds offensive to sexual preference definition after Amy Coney Barrett uses it uses the term in hearings. So that's pretty freaking crazy right there. Right. And, one of these podcasts I want to talk about, there's a whole bunch of segments I want to do, but I would like to talk about maybe we can do a sort of a bipartisan thing where we accuse each other of trying to control the language. But I think the left is pretty egregious at taking terms, twisting the meaning, or putting new meaning onto something, just kind of like completely like pulling the rug out of people from under people in conversations by changing the meaning of words. But in this case right here, sexual preference, nobody would have batted an eyelash about that last week. And all of a sudden it's... Oh,
yeah, they would have.
Sexual preference.
Sexual preference is, for the LGBTQ. I can never get all the letters, man. Community, kind of a derogatory thing because, from their point of view, a long time. I have a lot of gay friends, and my wife has a lot of gay friends and people that have been involved in our lives, and I've had some really, really deep conversations with them about this stuff. And, one of the things that really drives the ones I've talked to, at least baddie, is that people assume that this is a choice that they made. And it isn't a choice that they make. It's how they're born. It's how they feel. It's like if I ask you, is that woman pretty or is that woman pretty? And you pick one, like, it's not like you made that choice, like cognitively, that's how you feel. It just is a natural feeling you have, and it's the same thing for them. And so the term sexual preference makes it sound like they're making this choice to live this lifestyle, to have these feelings, and it's not the case. So yeah, it's been a derogatory thing for a while, but it's just not something that maybe has been talked about as much or blown up. But that's why they're upset about it. And to the point of changing the language, I think language itself changes as we get a deeper understanding of things. I mean, if you go back several hundred years and I said you're a slave owner, that would not have had a derogatory term. But if I come up to you now and say you're a slave owner, that has a whole totally different meaning. And so as our culture changes and as we adapt to, different lifestyles and different things, the meanings and context of a word changes. And I think we should update that in the dictionary. Now, should it have happened a week after it blew up in the media because of
like the hours
a judge? Yeah, right. I mean, that's maybe, I that could be a discussion, but I don't disagree that the term is derogatory towards that community, and that it makes sense that people should be made aware of that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree, and I also I'm going to give a huge benefit of the doubt on this because language changes, it evolves, and that's totally normal. Like, we don't say the word Negro anymore, but like in the 80s, that was like a pretty commonly used term. We always say like we use the term African American or Black. Maybe in 20, 30 years, Black will be considered offensive, right? And if it is, cool, we'll adjust to it, we'll adapt. But right now, when we look at this, it makes sense, yeah, because at the end of the day, it's like being straight for me is not a sexual preference. I'm just straight. I know, like, there's no doubt there. It's like I'm hyper aware that I'm a straight dude. So as a person that's LGBTQ is probably hyper aware that they are gay or lesbian.
Right.
LGBTQ. With that being said, Joe Biden said sexual preference like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, so you did hear about this.
Even Huffington Post, I was just looking it up. Even Huffington Post was like, yeah, she kind of got dragged for this. And I was like, wow, even the Huffington Post is like, yeah, there's no reason to be like, this is a little too far. And she apologized immediately. She's like, just like discrimination, I don't want any prejudice towards LGBTQ community. I'm sorry if I offended anybody. She rolled back on it. Which is the right thing to do, right? She didn't know, and that's fair. She probably honestly didn't know that was something wrong, and so it's like, all right, now she immediately she didn't defend it. She wasn't just like, no, I said preference and like that would be what Trump would do. She handled it really well. I mean, and she's also one last note. She very explicitly also said, like, just because Scalia thought one way on gay marriage, you can't presume that I'm going to think that way too, just because of another person. And I'm actually really respecting her responses.
Yeah, turns out she's a good justice. So, anyways, so here's a rare moment where on camera I can actually say I genuinely didn't actually know sexual preference was deemed offensive. Let's say I didn't know people took offense to it. I thought it was, honestly, to me, sexual preference had a slot in the bookshelf of like politically correct corporate speak. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what you put on a corporate form. Like, what's your, although they wouldn't be asking that. I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say with that, but so.
No, I mean, it makes sense what you're saying. And when at first blush, the sexual preference doesn't seem like it should be derogatory. And, of the terms you could use, I don't think it's the most derogatory, but the reason that it is that way is because it implies that it's a choice.
Right. I understand that. Yeah.
And so, I think it just, people that use it probably aren't using it in a derogatory way. And I think a lot of people probably don't take it derogatory, but some do. And the biggest thing that I think will come from this, hopefully, is that more people become think about it and become aware that, for the people that live these lives, that these types of lives that are gay or whatever, like, it's generally not easy because it's not normal as far as like the majority, right? Like, and anything you do that isn't the majority is always harder to get through. Yep.
I will acknowledge majority privilege is a thing.
Yeah, and so just more awareness that it's not a choice that they're making; it's a life that they were born into, the person that they are, and we should just be aware of it. But I don't think it's a huge bad term, but it definitely makes sense that it's derogatory.
And I mean, I remember, like, there's been times too that it's not that things are too far, it's just that things are like so adapting and changing that it's like I sometimes can't keep up with it. I mean, I remember one time I went to like a diversity training and someone shared that there was like over 200 different pronouns. I was like, all right, if someone comes to me and they say, hey, I associate as they, zim, there, which I think was one of them. I hope I'm not being, prejudiced on that. I will absolutely refer to somebody by the pronouns they introduced them to me. But I can't memorize 200 pronouns. It's a lot. But if someone comes to me and they ask me to refer to them a certain way, I'm like, you know what? You let me know what you want and I got you. So that's my mentality. But I also get it. Like, there's so many changes. And I guess part of it is like this is the first time in history that like there's actual been like true liberation and freedom for the LGBTQ community. We're not old enough to, we're all born in like the 80s, 90s and whatnot. Like we haven't been around enough to say, wow, like, people like, I don't know if you're watching Nurse Ratched at all, but like that's like a legitimate, they go over, different interventions for people and in a psychiatric ward. And if you go look into it, an actual legitimate procedure for someone who was gay all the way up until the 60s was like lobotomy. They would lobotomize people who were gay or lesbian. They would boil them in water to cure the gay.
Right.
Right. Like this stuff actually happened like in our parents' age. It's some scary stuff, dude. So I mean, if they come out with every single pronoun in the world, like let them have it. Like we're not boiling people anymore.
Yeah, we can't really get into the pronouns talk right now, but I mean, I'll just quickly spit it out there that I kind of draw the line in the sand at a lot of those things. To me, there's a difference between being decent to the person in front of you and then on a national level saying, all right, we're expanding it to 200 genders. This is what it is. This is what can be on your birth certificate or whatever, or your driver's license. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, when you start doing that, it becomes very, very clear that those are arbitrary sort of like decisions to make.
I mean, and you don't have to agree. Like, in terms of like national level, like conforming to things, it's like, we could, I like how we usually just say like, a lot of forms now are like male, female, LGBTQ, like we'll like the other and specify, like, let us know. But also it's like, and like national registry, it's, national registry sounds like such a scary word, but like on driver's licenses, like tracking data, we do need some sort of like uniform agreement and maybe we haven't reached that yet. Maybe that's the point, that we just haven't reached, how we do this right now.
What if we just don't? What if those pronouns that you want for yourself just, it doesn't matter. So like you just use those in your personal life and then on your forms you just put down what your DNA is. Is your DNA XY or XX? That's it.
I mean personally, because here's the great like divide is like the at least the way I understand it is that there's your biological sex, which is for the most part. There are people born ambiguous.
Right, that's an edge case, though.
Yeah, but for the vast majority of people, 99% of people, DNA-wise, you're right. Like, we're one biological sex or the other. Gender, and maybe you'll disagree with me on this, but another podcast, I'm pretty sure I can compel you to change your mind if you do disagree.
Maybe.
Gender is wholeheartedly a social construct. Like the idea of what it means to be a man, the idea of what it means to be a woman, at least in the 2000s and 1900s, it is a socially constructed idea of like what
Let's do a podcast. Let's do a podcast on that. We're going to need maybe the whole hour and a half on that.
Totally. But I agree with what you're saying. But also, I'm agreeing as a white dude who just does not, a white, straight man.
Stop it. Be confident in your ideas.
Identity politics. No, it doesn't impact me whatsoever. And so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you do have three, straight white males talking about this, like with the experts, but,
I will renounce my straightness and break up with Sweetie if we need a gay token guy.
Two points on that.
Wednesday can't be too happy about that.
Yeah, she's not that happy about that. All right, I can't do that.
On that though. One, Chris, is I even though they're born ambiguous, because some people have both sets of genitals or whatever, I do believe they actually still fall into. I think they're XY. I think.
Oh, yeah?
I think. But yeah, you can't be XYX. Like the genetics just don't work that way. So even though the body got confused and made those. They actually, like, if you were to just sign instead of Mr. and Mrs. XY or XX or, whatever, like, but anyway, and the other point is when you were talking about the 200 different, pronouns or whatever, it made me think, like, as much as we try and most of us, at least, and especially us three, treat people with respect and do the right thing by others, sometimes we don't know. And if you are somebody that is, outside the norm, and especially the farther from the norm you get, or the smaller your community of people that really identify with you that way is, the more I think you need to be cognitive that a lot of people just don't know. And to Nate's point, like, he wasn't aware that was a term that would be taken derogatory. And so rather than freaking out and yelling at people and acting like, all, pardon the term in this particular context, butthurt about it, that, like, just let people know and say, hey, look, that term offends me because, and if they continue to use it or whatever, then great, then you need to react with a much higher level of emotion. But, like, you also need to treat other people with respect that they don't know what's going on in your life and all the things that you think and feel and do. And if you are, the more unique you are in your perspective or your lifestyle, the less other people are going to be aware of what you do and what offends you.
If I could even speak to my side of the aisle for a second, for whoever's out there watching, I mean, I think there's a huge disservice the left does to itself in terms of ostracizing people who are out of the loop on terminology. I mean, I'll never forget, I'm not going to use names or context to really, I want to keep this person ambiguous, because I know an individual who was running for an elected office. I remember talking to them after they spoke at a thing. They did not get elected. And I was like, this is probably why you didn't get elected. But one example was they spoke to this dude who was a manufacturer. And he's an older guy, maybe in his 60s, end of career. And this individual was speaking about, intersectional feminism and, like, the importance of, like, understanding how that operates. And the guy was simply just like, hey, I don't know what intersectional feminism is. Can you tell me? And she kind of berated this person for it. They're like, what? How do you not know what this is? And it was kind of like, intersectional feminism is a big issue. It's also a really bougie word that is just obnoxious. Like, it's not obnoxious in the conception, but we have to understand who our audience is. Like, using jargon, using fancy words just to sound more as an intellectual or more woke. Keep that for your table conversations with other people who are already at the same place as you. For other people who aren't there yet, they probably actually agree with 99% of what you're saying. You just got to talk about it in a way that is, like, understandable. I mean, I don't go talking about the neuroscience of trauma. I just simply tell people it's like, yeah, healthy relationships actually heal trauma. As a child welfare expert, I can share that. Anyone understands it. I don't need to get into all the crazy details of, like, attachment theory at age 4. It's like, no, just chill out. It's like, I bet we'd have a lot more people on our side if we came at it with a bit more grace.
I agree. Remember when the left, when the word on the left was tolerance? Remember that? That was back in the early 2000s. You don't hear about tolerance anymore. I think there's a reason for that, but we can get into that. Wait, we'll do that. We'll do that whenever we do, I don't know, another
divergence.
Well, tolerance implies that something isn't right, but you're just going to deal with it. I think that's why you don't hear about it anymore. Is it has an implication behind it that isn't really what the goal is of the left, right? Like, I'm going to tolerate you doing this. That definitely has a connotation to it, right?
Correct.
So yeah. it was a starting point back in the 2000s or whenever that was used, but it's good that they
probably a hallmark of the 70s. But all right, Chris, is it your turn or mine? I think it's your turn, right?
That was my only news story. I do have memes. If you like a meme, I can drop a meme, or you can
do
more.
Throw a
memes.
meme up there. Let's do it.
All right, so here's a fun meme. I may have sent this to you already, but it's a good one, and it's also.
Is it the Mike Pence one?
I do have that one ready to go too, but no, I've been trying to keep my memes relevant to.
You can throw that one up there, man. I had something to say about that. I just want to type it out in the text. But
I thought it was funny.
I saw this one.
This is good. It's a good one. So let me read it out loud. I'm just going to try to stretch it so you guys can see it. That did not work whatsoever. Okay. So basically the meme is, on the left you have Phineas and being like, so they're both looking at George Orwell's book 1984, which is a remarkably good book. And Phineas is like being banned in the United States for being pro-communist, and then Ferb's like being banned in the USSR for being anti-communist. And Phineas is going, Ferb, this one's looking at both of us at the same time. And then it's just like Perry Platt was like, just like, yeah, 1984. I love it. I love it.
I guess.
I'm a nerd and I freaking love this meme.
Okay, all right. Chris, which communists are getting banned arbitrarily?
It's a banned book.
No, man. The meme is that the book is banned for both being pro-communist and anti-communist at the same time. Depending on who's reading it.
Yeah. I didn't get this back when you gave it to me, and I didn't get it right now on air. All right, I'm here now. I got it. I'm on board.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I don't know if you haven't read 1984, go read it. Go reread it. It's even better if you reread it now after Trump. It's great.
Wait, in all seriousness, is that getting banned in the USA?
Yeah, absolutely. There's books. It is on the banned book list for a bunch of high schools across the country.
Why?
You know, what's important to keep in mind, like Nathan, I think I forget this a lot, is that, you know, we're in Connecticut. The reality is Connecticut is one of the best school systems in the country. We have some of the best public school education next to Massachusetts and Washington, D.C. This is not liberal agenda bullshit. It's like actually our SAT scores, the quality, our job placements, all of the above. The other states kind of suck. I mean, like this is on the banned book list for a lot of states. I don't have them off the top of my head, but go look into it. Like this book is banned. Yeah.
That's another thing I'm learning tonight, folks. That's pretty disheartening. If it's banned in your state,
that's why we're here, to learn from each other.
No, it's not. We're here to argue and win.
Harry Potter's banned. Well, the first book.
Harry Potter was banned in my house.
I love it. It's sorcery. It's a wizardry. There's also another good one that's fun. It's banned for a really dumb reason, but you know, both of Mice and Men and oh my gosh, why am I forgetting it? Don't say it. It's the you know where Atticus, the lawyer.
Yes, I was going to say Atticus. What is that? Yes, Killmonger.
Because it has the N word in it.
Yes, I know. Oh my God, the irony. Seriously.
Like, no, this is literally such a pro-civil rights book. Why are you? It's wild, man.
Hey, listen, man. I'm thinking about starting a dictatorship where our main philosophy is not to, you know, get rid of books, and it's going to be you and me, right? And then we'll just run everything.
You know, I'm doing in my whole keynote. I'm just talking about books. I'm giving you a total troll. They gave me a whole hour. I'm like, how do I fill this up? And I'm like, books have meant a lot to me. So let me share all the values I've learned from this stack of books. I actually had it right there. So.
Okay. All right. So let me. I think we can do one more, and then we can move on. I think we're about the half-hour mark, but I kind of want to throw this one out here. And unfortunately, this one might spawn some conversation. So here we go. Department of Justice is suing Yale, accusing it of discriminating against Asian American and white applicants. Their claims are leveraging the model minority myth to pit racial groups against each other, scholars say. So basically, to break this down, I won't go down into the article, but basically it's a whole thing about how affirmative action essentially, and not necessarily even affirmative action, the way that SAT scores are weighted and how applicants are weighted essentially disadvantages Asians and whites and privileges minorities, right? And I actually care less about the whites in here because they're very close to the median. So it disadvantages whites just a little bit, but it impacts Asian Americans a lot. So you have to get like 400 more points on your SAT on average it's
kind of like it's based on. So I'm going to try my best not to butcher this argument, but I've heard people explain it very well, and it holds a lot of merit because the reality is there's plenty of people in the country that have perfect SAT scores that get into that could hypothetically get into Yale and fill a whole class with just perfect SAT scores. The point of like these Ivy League classes dives a lot deeper than just intelligent people. They're trying to build up if you just have a whole class, let's imagine you have a whole class of white people, like Yale's always been, or a whole class of just Asian Americans, or a whole class of just African Americans or Black individuals. You're not getting the richness, the culture that they want to bring to the table. You're not getting the richness of experiences. Like, go look at because
aren't you supposed to be getting your information from the professor?
Let me ask and make sure that
I don't have a problem with diversity. But
I think the issue is just simply put, it's they're trying to create diversified experiences and diversified individuals, and so again, they can fill these classes with perfect SAT scores without a problem. So then they have to think about, all right, well, how do we actually want to build a class of people for these 2,000 students? How do we want to make this? Because you do learn a lot in the class, but you learn a lot outside of the classroom. Like, the whole point is that's why Yale likes to have huge international populations. It's why they like to have representation from preferably 50 states, because you get to know your 2,000 people really well. Like, it's a tight-knit class. Like, people know each other, and that's what they're trying to cultivate. They're trying to cultivate that network. So this way, when they leave, you have people from all 50 states, multiple countries, whatnot, forever connected from their experiences at Yale. That's kind of what they're.
So let me make sure I understand what's going on here. Yale has a specific. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So DOJ is investigating for something, but I'm trying to understand exactly what it is that they did. The way I take it is they are trying to, have a diversification of races, ethnicities, locations, etc. at their school, and they're doing it by adjusting the requirements for entry dependent on those things. As an example, Asians generally may score higher on SATs, so for you to be eligible for Yale as an Asian, you have to have a higher SAT score than you would for if you were white or Black. Is that what's happening?
Relatively speaking.
Okay, so
but all of them require like almost perfect. It's not like they're it's not like they're letting somebody in with like this in the 50th percentile. Everybody applying to Yale is pretty much in the 90th percentile of SAT scores.
Well, according to, I don't remember what the range of SAT scores are anymore. It's been a long time
throughout the country.
But according to what Nate was saying, the Asians have to score 400 points higher than the Blacks or the whites.
Is that what it?
So first, number one, disclaimer. Fact check me on that, please. There is a accepted range. I don't know if it's 400 or 800.
No, the average SAT score for Yale is the reading and writing portion is between a 720 and 770, and the math portion is between a 740 and 800. Meaning that pretty much every single person that's applying into Yale has to have at least a 720. So maybe it's like a 40-point difference. But
a perfect is 1,600, right?
Yeah.
I think it was. I think SAT scoring has changed recently.
Oh.
It's 1,600. It's 1,600. That's the top SAT. No, I mean, it's
just what I wanted to point out. The stat that I was talking about with the difference, that difference is an average nationwide one. And again, fact check it. So
gotcha.
I don't know if that was exactly perfect.
And I'm sharing,
but specifically at Yale, they are being investigated for disadvantaging specifically Asians, but also whites, just because whites are slightly above the median.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, if I'm comfortable with lowering requirements for people that are disadvantaged and need help to getting to places, then how can you not be comfortable with raising the bar for those that maybe are overachieving? But at the same time, my gut is I believe in just have a bar, and if you cross the bar, then you're eligible. That's like how my base feeling is. So it's kind of a tough one.
That's a nice philosophical point that people like to think of, and I would agree with that. However, in practice, it's so much more complicated because Yale has a fixed amount of people they can allow in. So I think it's either 1,200 or 2,000 per class. In every class, they're receiving 15 to 20,000 applicants. Almost all of these applications meet the SAT requirements that Yale would look for, getting that 720. So they have to get a little bit more. So also, I think these investigations are looking at things a little bit black and white. I mean, there's a lot more that's getting factored into a person's acceptance. It's like, what community services are they doing? What extracurriculars are they involved in? What research have they done as a high schooler? Like, you have people in,
okay,
right? Like, it's way more. It's not as black and white. It's not as black and white. It's just looking at
Okay.
SAT scores.
So Chris, so imagine this was the 1950s and somebody was making the argument that racial cohesion actually benefits a class. And then to that ends, that's how we're justifying racism.
Racial cohesion as
that?
what? You mean racial cohesion as
As
diversity?
in monogamous, white, black, whatever, but make it segregated classes. What if somebody was making the argument that increased, say they said, oh, we've got statistics, so it increases the scores, everybody does better, like everybody gets along better. If somebody was making that argument, would you be comfortable with that as an excuse for segregation?
No, I would not.
Right. So, okay. So let me tie this in. So the reason why I'm asking is because Yale is allegedly actively discriminating against Asian people. I understand that they're trying to help black people, right? They're trying to leverage up a minority, or they're trying to create a culture in the classroom. I understand that. But in order to reach that end, they are discriminating based on race against Asians and to a smaller degree white people. I mean, I don't really care about that, but my point is that you have an end that you're talking about that you're okay with achieving, which is diversity in the classroom, and you are justifying racial discrimination to reach that end, right? And the only difference is that you disagree with those white supremacists, and you agree with the racial.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I got to look more into it, but that's a strong, compelling argument.
So that's how I see it as we stand now. Now, once again, I mean, maybe I'll learn something. Look into it if you can. Maybe there's a better argument that I haven't heard yet. But I am number one, really in favor of meritocracy, meaning if you do well, you get in. That's my real big thing. I love meritocracy.
What do you do when? So race outside the equation. What do you do when, say, you have 3,000 applicants? Every single one of them has perfect SAT scores, all applying into Yale. How do you only choose 1,200 of them?
I'll tell you what I don't do is I don't look at their race.
That's fair.
Because you can fractionate any individual down to 1,000 different variables before you get to race. There's absolutely no reason to be looking at race.
Yeah, interesting. I gotta look more into it. I really do.
Right, and this is kind of where the left right so you're giving me the benefit of the doubt because you know me, right, and you know that I'm not a racist person. At least you suspect. I suspect. But the problem with this conversation is that what I said right there is what conservatives are saying. This is the argument. And the problem is that, number one, the argument is not getting to the people on the left. That's how we view it. And then number two, it's being misconstrued as, oh, they're just saying that because they're racist. Because they don't want black people in Yale or some, stupid shit like that. So, I don't know. Take a look at that. See if you can find some more arguments on that. I'm curious, genuinely. I want to know because, like I told somebody in the heated conversation I had with them, the world is not as interesting as we think it is. So, I mean, this story is almost too good to be true for people on the right. We're like, yeah, they're discriminating against white people and Asians. Like, this is the exact case that takes down affirmative action for us. So,
I gotta look more into it. It looks like there's a good Washington Post article on it, but I gotta read it because I'm not. My ability to contribute further in the conversation. I mean, I've said most of the points I already believe in, but I got to look more into it. I do have one more quick story. I mean, I don't know if this is okay to share.
Yeah, sure. Whatever. We got time.
Cool. So this is like a tweet. I don't know. Can you guys read the tweet?
Yeah, I can. Read it out loud.
So it's from Jameli Hill, who's more of like, I believe, more just a prominent social media presence at this point. But I feel like this point is really, really prominent. She tweets, "I don't know who needs to hear this, but just imagine the reaction if it would have been discovered that anyone connected to Black Lives Matter was plotting to kidnap a United States governor." Right? If Black Lives Matter was, if people were not even part of Black Lives Matter, just people who were participating in a march or something, was ready to go kidnap the governor of Michigan, conservatives be up in arms. But then a couple people who happen to, obviously I'm sure Trump is not advocating for kidnapping the governor, although he really failed to dismiss these people. He was just like, instead of saying, wow, I'm so glad the governor's okay, he's like, this is a horrible governor. But anyways, some people who happen to be his supporter literally planned in detail how to kidnap the governor, and thank God they were stopped. That's crazy. Regardless of your politics, we should not be kidnapping.
Yeah, of course.
You never heard me say, like, even when Trump was sick with COVID, I wasn't wishing death on him. I was like, yeah, really bad he died. I don't want anyone dying.
That's because you're a good person, Chris.
But a lot of people, relatively speaking, didn't want Trump to die because also, like, if he dies, it creates a constitutional nightmare because then it's like, does his votes go to Pence? Like, how does that work, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, it's just crazy to me that this isn't a bigger story. I barely see it, and then
I saw a lot of it. I don't know what you're talking about, man. It was everywhere.
I felt like it fizzled out pretty quickly, but maybe that's just because of my timeline.
I think it's because we're more attracted to things that are maybe open-ended. Like, for example, a lot of people talk about when George Floyd died, it wasn't an open shut case. Like, it wasn't easy to, that sounds wrong. There was enough of a sliver of controversy to get in there where this thing couldn't be closed out for months, right? So the easy things like, hey, everybody freaking agrees, put every single one of those kidnappers in jail. Like, nobody disagrees with that except for like 10 other people that they didn't catch. You know what I'm saying? So that one's open and shut. So it was everywhere. It was a couple days. I still see a couple references to it on my feed now, but like that one's open and shut. Everybody agrees. Get rid of them. You know what I'm saying?
What about, I think I agree on that, but Trump's response was so
I didn't see it.
Let me get the tweet. Because I want to read this out loud.
What do you think, Tim?
While you're pulling it up, my comment on this particular tweet is, you see this from both sides. There's tons of these tweets that say, if these riots were
I've said that to you. It's not even
Republicans or like Trump supporters or whatever. Like, if they were doing this, a lot of my friends say stuff about that, about things that happen on the left and also things that happen on the right. And these types of comments are make sense. Like, you're saying, hey, you would react this like differently if you agreed with the point or didn't, but it doesn't introspect enough to say that that's how I would react as well. And I don't think I just stated that very well at all. Sorry, I've been chasing my kid around. He's been crying, so I just get back. I guess like these comments strike a chord because we all know that if it was the other side, they'd react just as bad or worse than my side. But the fact is, you're reacting the same way they would, and vice versa. And like, if more people would just sit down when they see something that makes them react strongly and realize that everybody has a point of view, and if you can talk about it and not react ignorantly, I don't know how to say that differently, like, you're going to end up being 95% on the same page. Like, kind of to what you're saying, Nate. I did not say my point well at all there. Sorry.
No, yeah. I mean, we get it.
I do have his tweet. So he goes, he did a couple tweets, but he goes, Governor Whitmore of Michigan has done a terrible job. She locked down her state for everyone except her husband's voting activities. The federal government provided tremendous help to the great people of Michigan. My Justice Department and federal law enforcement announced today that they foiled a dangerous plot against the governor of Michigan. Rather than say thank you, she calls me white supremacist, while Biden and Democrats refuse to condemn Antifa.
Hey, that's true.
Looters and mobs then burn down Democrat-run cities. I do not tolerate any extreme violence, defending all Americans, even those who oppose and attack me. It is what I will always do as your president. Governor Whitmore, open up your state, open up your schools, and open up your churches. I just it's her life. No, it's not. Her life was literally almost like compromised, and he's just like, she's a terrible governor.
Right. So immediately,
what did he have to do with the stopping of it? Like, did he personally?
He's just in charge of the FBI technically.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah. So his Department of Justice saved her from getting kidnapped, And then she's like, Donald Trump is a white supremacist. He's a racist. All right, I'm being hyperbolic. Sorry.
I mean, his Department of Justice also put out information that said that he was really, the Russians were supporting his election campaign, and at that point, they weren't his.
What?
She was saying these things ahead of time. I mean, like before the kidnapping ever happened. It doesn't come on, give her a sense of to breathe. The woman almost got kidnapped, dude.
Right. No. So okay. So what I'm talking about is her post scandal. All of this post the kidnapping thing. She was then saying this is Donald Trump's fault. Like his rhetoric.
Oh, yeah, because like his supporters are insane.
Okay, but those particular people are on camera saying Donald Trump is not your friend. You should not be relying on Donald Trump. Go ahead and fact check that.
I will.
So they are not Trump supporters.
I think they're anarchists.
They are anarchists, yes. You could even call them right-wing anarchists, but I mean, whatever that means, anarchist is generally down on the political compass. So, I would still say they're probably right of center anarchists. So, anyways, all right. So, I think that's pretty good. Oh man, I really enjoyed those opening conversations. We should just 2 hours of that some night. But let's move on to the abortion. Did we say we were going to do abortion?
Yeah, we're talking abortion right now.
Or no. We said we're going to do China first because that's quick.
Sure, let's do China first.
Okay. All right. How do you want to do this?
I mean, I can just kick it off. I mean,
sure,
really, I can give just an overview of China. I think a lot of people have a very interesting perspective of the country, but when we look at it, they've had really, really they're almost like a too big to totally fail country. But because of that, there has been massive humanitarian crises throughout the country through the last 100 years. So especially with Mao Zedong. So Mao Zedong was a really rough leader of China. So basically, this guy establishes the Communist Party, becomes in charge of the country, and he's a revolutionary, right? So he comes in through revolutionary means for the most part. He was very, very popular in the beginning. Towards the end, I mean, I don't know how feasible this is, but basically, when we look at China, they end up there's a really good way to look at China. So when you compare China to other countries such as the United States, our country, we went through these technological booms because we had no other choice but to. Innovation required us because we didn't have enough people. So in terms of labor, we had to find ways to innovate to be able to have a larger outputs. China doesn't run into that problem. So, for thousands of years, China technically is ahead technologically to the rest of the world.
Yep.
But it's almost like this fallacy. You have too many people, so you don't end up with as many Einsteins because there's no need for it, right? You don't need to revolutionize farming when you have tons and tons and tons of peasants able to do farming. Eventually, you end up with people hungry, starving, or civil wars, whatnot. Mao Zedong comes in, and I'm simplifying this a bit, but he comes in with these ideas of turning China communist. And one of the ways that he does this is realize that China has a huge agricultural farming sector. And what they do basically is create collaborative farming communities. And they like to taunt it because it's all right, look at these people. They're growing for themselves. They're selling the extra. They're thriving. And they would point to these unicorn kind of compounds of farmers when in reality, the rest of the country started to starve because of it. He started to roll out these 10-year plans where it was every 10 years, there was all right, this is what we're going to do. This is our 5-year plan. So this is what we're going to do in these next 5 years. And most of it turned into a major failure. The reality is his people starved, tens of millions of people starved under Mao Zedong's leadership.
Let me just clarify that a little bit. So Mao realized that China was behind technologically for the rest of the world, right? He realized that the rest of the world was industrialized. This was this was after World War II, so this was post 1949.
Yep.
This was I'm not sure exactly how far up this went. I think it was the 60s, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, because that's when the
while ago that I looked into this.
Too.
Yeah, so what Mao was doing was he's not just making communities. What he was doing was he was repurposing vast swaths of the population to move them into sectors like iron industry and things like that to sort of artificially spark an industrial revolution and jumpstart the country ahead. And as a result, since it wasn't natural, since it was sort of regimented from above, like Chris was starting to say, millions and millions of people died. The estimates that I saw were about 29 million to about 79 million people dead in that country. 79 million people. Like, first of all, once you get past 10 million, you know, what are you going to do with that number? But that's just that's insane. So
dead from starvation, or what?
That's the People's Republic of China.
Dead from starvation over how many years?
I think it was that 20-ish year period.
So about 1 million people a year were starving to death.
Yeah.
And what gets worse too is like so eventually other people politically are like, wow, this is really bad. Like let's get rid of Mao Zedong. And so he kind of very Orwellian had been able to cultivate cult leadership in the youth. So like the college sector, the high schoolers. To the point that people were turning on their parents. People were just like, you are evil. And that's where you get the Red Army, the Red Bands. And so the Red Bands kill a couple million more, or hundreds of thousands more people. And eventually, political coup, Mao Zedong takes back over the leadership of the country, reestablishes his communist rule, continues, really kind of fails in his leadership. But the problem with China is that you have so many people in this country that fast forward to today where you have Xi Jinping running the country, where you have now you do have these exportations, right? China is working to build its wealth because it's able to provide goods for the rest of the world. They're able to do that in a way that's very, very dangerous to our country and the rest of the world, because if you think about it, China basically could employ its people at slave labor. And there's no choice there. There's no choice for the slave wages. And so what ends up happening is, and now granted, China likes to taunt, like, you have the capitalistic zones. And great, for those capitalistic zones, they're thriving. People are probably doing really well in there. They're probably really happy, a couple million people. But you have to remember that millions of people compared to a billion population size is insignificant. I mean, you have tens of millions of people in these starvation wage jobs. And what ends up happening is, how can we compete with that, right? Like, how can we compete with a corporation that says, all right, let's move our jobs to China, when they can literally pay workers 8 cents an hour to make T-shirts? Like, that's why you don't have American-made clothes anymore. Like, that's why you don't have American-made anything. Or for that matter, this is not just a pro, like, USA. It's like, that's why you don't see Canada-made shit. That's why you don't see European-made stuff. Like, if you do, it's hundreds of dollars and basically considered, like, if you're buying Gucci, right? Like, that's the only things that are made in any of our first world kind of industrial complexes.
Yeah, so, I mean, if we back it up a little bit, so we talk about, so the reason why we were able to do that, why we're able to trade with China and China is able to trade with the world, is 1979, the U.S. opened up trade relations with China. And I guess the point back then was that the United States was actually trying to sort of peel China away from the USSR because they were both communist nations, and that bloc was just too powerful for us to take on unified. So I believe that, like, and fact check me on this, people, but I believe there was a political schism between the two of them in the first place that allowed the United States to come in and say, "Hey, we'll trade with you. Let's moderate you. Let's get you more capitalist." And it's kind of ironic because while they did become so much more capitalist, they still have a very, very strict authoritarian regime. And I suppose we can probably get into that now as sort of the modern atrocities that they're committing. So I'll let you kick it off, Chris. What do you have on the Uyghurs? Let's talk about them.
No, you go first. I kind of just spoke a few lectures right there. So you go for it. You next part.
But before you get onto another topic, let me touch base on a couple thoughts I've had. So for those watching, I don't know that much about China's history, about the politics behind it all. So I'm in learning mode here, and so I'll be asking questions and demanding proof of.
Sorry, I was supposed to announce that. Sorry.
No, you're good. So, Chris, you kind of made some comments on how things are made in China and they're not made here, or Canada, or other already developed countries, and that if the items that are super expensive. But to kind of go along with that point, if China didn't have these low wages, then things would cost that much, right? Like instead of being able to go buy a t-shirt for $5, it's going to be 15 or 20 or 25. So, I mean, we also are benefiting from, it's not just China sucking up the global economy money and taking it and running. Like everybody else is also benefiting by getting goods cheaper. I'm not trying to say they're doing things right. I'm just like the argument you made sounded like, China is being able to suck all this wealth from the world by using slave labor. And
I would argue that I agree with you. I agree, and I think that's kind of the enticing part of this. Is like, all right, well, we do get good. I mean, imagine how much more iPhones may cost. But I think that's imagining how much more iPhones would cost and t-shirts would cost in the current system. I bet if we required, and this might be like the most like pro kind of like capitalist idea I have, I bet if overnight we snapped our fingers and we made it so it is illegal, to import t-shirts anymore to this country. Overnight, t-shirts are going to get super expensive. However, within a couple months, manufacturers, innovators in our country most likely will find ways to make t-shirts as cheap as they possibly can be, so people can buy them again at a relative, because that's where the money is going to be. Maybe that means like better technology to mass produce shirts. Maybe it means using new fabrics that are more inexpensive that people haven't explored yet. Instead, we've kind of stagnated a lot of innovations on ways to like do this. Instead of innovating more proactive ways to make clothing or make iPhones, instead we're in this world where it's like, the labor for like the manufacturing, the assemblance part of this is very, very, very inexpensive. I mean, of course, in our country, we still have a great engineering sector. We have a great, pharmaceutical sector, as we talked about in the past. Like in those terms, the highly skilled jobs, the highly skilled forms of production are still here. But the quote unquote low skilled jobs have been able to be outsourced versus finding more innovative ways to produce these things in the first place. Finally, one last quick sentence. It may be like rainbows and butterflies today, but not to be too doomsday-y, but it's like 15 years down the road, what is this going to look like, right? Like what long-term consequences come from having this massive reliance on another country's like basically using slaves?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to kind of continue on that point, I 100% agree with you. The jobs in the manufacturing things that have been outsourced are mostly, at least initially, were heavy labor-intensive, low-skill jobs. We've now seen a lot more of the higher skill manufacturing, such as an iPhone, right? Putting those together is not easy, outsourced. But most of the iPhone and other tech items like that, they're automated. There's not a whole lot of labor involved in that. And that gets to the next point that I was going to make is 15 years from now, China's going to have a problem because all of those low skill manufacturing jobs are going to start to become automated. And once automation becomes a little bit cheaper and a little bit more readily available, they lose that power. They lose the advantage they have by having millions and millions of people that can do these types of jobs. The strength of the future is going to be educated people that can program, that can, invent, develop, and do things of those nature. Those are the countries that are going to continue forward and be the strongest.
You're correct, but you can't educate people unless your country is wealthy. Right. So
I'm not saying that they don't, like, at the end of the day, right? What is a dollar? A dollar is something, or any currency, right? It's something you're given for some amount of energy, time, effort, work, or whatever you put in. But almost always it's related to the amount of time that you spend, because time is the true currency, right? And if you have millions of people, you have much more available currency to go out and develop product. So having people is still going to be an advantage, but not educating and not driving your population to be educated. An authoritarian regime does not do that as much. And I've been to China, albeit 10 years ago, and the population there is not educated. There's plenty of people, like cities and people that you meet in the factories and stuff. Sure, there's plenty of but by and large, they're not. And they're also very much held back from information. when I was there, like you could
Right, the
not
Great
connect
Firewall.
to YouTube. Like it didn't even exist, right? Like internet is very much limited on what you can see. It's what the government allowed them to
So-
see.
Let's get into that then. Let's get into the modern sort of atrocities or controls or issues with the Chinese People's Republic of China, as it is. So the number one thing on our list that we want to talk about is the concentration camps containing the Uyghurs, right? So China is actively detaining about 1 million Uyghur Muslims in its one of its western districts. I'm not sure exactly which one. I don't remember.
So for us laymen, can you explain the difference between a Uyghur Muslim, a regular Muslim?
It's
that
just
kind
an
of stuff?
it's an ethnic designation. So,
So say, like,
they
saying
are
somebody's
their
Jewish?
So their religion is Muslim, and their ethnic group is Uyghurs. So I don't, it's probably just a regional sect or a regional population that is generally defined as Uyghurs,
Okay.
and that's spelled really weird. It's like you,
Yeah,
yeah, it's weird.
but they're basically using these people as slave labor. In
It's not just
genocide.
that. So the slave labor, that's like regular medieval horribleness, but they're actually also reprogramming them. They're actually doing Orwellian programs to reformat them to
Yeah.
educate them into believing in the Chinese nation and
And they're
away from Islam and towards the People's
Murdering.
Republic of China.
And just killing anybody who doesn't.
Right. Yeah. So it's not a stretch to say that what the atrocities of World War II Nazi Germany are taking place right now in China. Right now.
Without a doubt.
Right. So that and this is point number one of, like, I mean, honestly, that's the biggest point. But okay, so let me try to be as exact as possible. So it's 1 million Uyghurs. They aren't killing them in the boatloads like the Nazis were. The point is not extermination here. They are killing a bunch of them. But again, extermination is not the point. And I'm like putting a fine point on genocide. You know what I'm saying? Like, I understand, like, it's all horrible. Let's not, get a twist in here. But it does seem to be a re-education, mass detention, just mass slave labor. It's horrible. And let's harken back to the meme in the story that you put up earlier, Chris, where China now has a seat on the Human Rights, Council in the UN. I got to tell you, man, that's why a lot of people on the right, I suppose the anti-globalist crowd, really just has no warm and fuzzies for the UN. We just think it's a joke.
I don't blame you.
So it's stuff like that. So no shared values there, I would say.
Yeah, like straight up, like China news headline conducting mass sterilization on Muslims. Like, let's be honest with what that means. That means they're surgically like neutering and spaying people.
That's okay. So that's genocide. I stand corrected.
Isn't that like, it's like, so I think it goes deeper than it's just, when we talk about when we look at the trade problems with China, right? Like, yes, we're getting products from them. Yes, we're getting these things. And yes, that's financial problems. But it's so more deeply rooted than that. It's a humanitarian crisis. Like we should not be entertaining or working alongside a country that is explicitly taking part in unrenounced humanitarian crises. Like we are condemning it, I guess. But even to that level, it's like, we honestly know we shouldn't be trading with China right now until they stop, like,
I agree,
sterilizing their people. Like, what the hell?
Like, nobody should be trading with them. So that was one of my things. Like, like, that's my boy Trump out there, and he's getting us trade deals and whatnot. But I started thinking, like, because he was kind of the one that turned the whole country, for better or for worse. He's kind of the one that sort of turned the national attention on this problem that did exist, and it's not something that he sort of like ginned up to make us, like, to give us some, national unity to have a foe. When he was doing that whole trade deal and trying to get a better trade deal and really being tough on negotiation, I was happy at first, and then I was starting to think, like, wait a second. Like, we're actually in and I'll get into this in a little bit. Like, we're in a cyber war with these people. they're in territorial disputes with like the entire Pacific. They're, you know, like they have 1 million Muslim Uyghurs in concentration camps. Like Chris said, they're sterilizing them. They're reformatting them. They're doing, you know, like they're just like they're the worst. Okay, so before I get into my stuff, Tim, do you have any questions about this so far?
No, not really. I mean, I've heard some bits and pieces about this. I've seen headlines and read a little bit on the articles, and I mean, I knew it was going on. I don't know all the details and the depth and the political reasons and stuff, but you know, I think it's bullshit. And I generally think that we need to take a stance, but I don't think that anyone's going to take a strong stance around the globe until everyone does it together. Because for the first country that says we now are not going to be trading with China, every single company in that country is fucked.
Yep, loses out.
Everybody sources stuff through China somewhere or another, and so entire economies would crash. So what do? Like you have to start doing it slowly and piecemealing these things back.
I think it's happening now.
So you know, I mean, we need to be vocal about it, and we need to keep telling our governments that this is bullshit, that we don't agree as a people. Hopefully business owners look at this and start, you know, just also for their moral sake, start pulling out and looking at other countries. There's plenty of other countries, and actually China, again, back before I changed my life around and got into financial business, I was an engineer, and that's why I was in China. We had a supplier there, and we started looking at other countries when I was still in the engineering world, because China was no longer that cheap. When you started taking into account the shipping cost and the defect rate, and then also the increase in labor cost that they have there. I mean, obviously, their standard of living has been increasing exponentially since the 80s when all this stuff started. They just weren't that cheap. It's easier to go somewhere else. So now we started looking at Brazil, India. Something that you guys talked about was the China population, but India and China basically have the same population.
Right.
They're like not even probably 1% off from each other. It's insane how close they are, right? Like that chunk of the world has such a high density of population,
right,
compared to everything else. But so there's plenty of other places to look, but it takes time to set up these global supply chains. So I don't really know what can be done in the immediate future.
Awareness.
other than awareness and efforts, any effort you can make as an individual to avoid, if possible, if feasible, Chinese products and supply chains, and see what you can do to hurt them. But
I mean, just looking at like a Washington Post article, it's like this is from just like a week ago, like 2 weeks ago. It actually came out on my birthday. Like the Washington Post journalist straight up tried to visit a detention center, and their car was swarmed by 8 police cars in China, and they were just stopped. Like there's literally like satellite images of there's 14 facilities currently being built. Satellite images show dozens more. Each one can hold on to like 10,000 people, and they're branded as these re-education facilities where they literally found like a tunnel where they basically can bring people to avoid seeing them over like they're bringing people underground in these places, so we can't even get satellite images of what they look like. And this is not some like fringe news. This is not like Alex Jones. This is the Washington Post reporting on this. That's and they're basically
Can you imagine them putting Alex Jones in handcuffs as he's trying to do like a supplements commercial? It's, all right,
might as well. He's wild. He's
fun.
The sea turtle turning people.
The frogs. They're turning the frogs gay.
I think all of the Western countries and all the the U.S. and Europe and all these countries, they really need to focus on trying to educate the Chinese population as well, looking at trying to get propaganda and stuff.
So let me talk about that. So there is what they call the Great Firewall around the Chinese internet. So it's just one basic. It's like a huge. As a person who works in IT, I actually can't imagine what the actual physical components of this, but it's basically a large firewall that doesn't allow anything in except for what China wants to. So, wow. And this is kind of funny because everybody was like we're a very capitalist and semi laissez-faire country, and we were all kind of like, well, why is Donald Trump like trying to buy TikTok? If you guys remember a couple, maybe a month ago,
we should ban TikTok.
Right. So it's kind of funny because we're all like, wow, that sounds like a lot of like government interference. I don't really like that. Why is he doing that to TikTok? And it's like, if you look at the list of things that China has banned, it's like, it's everything, like Facebook, Twitter, all of it. Everything is banned in China, all of it.
What's crazy too is this section I agree with Trump. It's not that he's banning TikTok. He's like, if it's not purchased and owned by another country outside of China, then we're banning it, because it's like,
right, yeah, because they're massively protectionist.
Well, think about it. China's straight up using like all of the facial recognition, all of the imagery, everything from, think like there's tens of Americans' information just like dumped into China. And yeah, China, I'm sure, has their like slave labor of computer scientists that are just analyzing the hell out of this stuff.
Yep. So all right. So sort of on that note, so I can roll us into the next topic actually. So I have two things that I happen to have personal expertise in. One of them I have expertise in, the other one I have personal experience in. It's kind of different things. But so with the technology thing, it's really interesting. You mentioned the Washington Post crew that got pulled over. So when you go into that region in China, if you travel there, on the border, all of the borders locked down. So when you go through the border control, they actually make you download a virus onto your phone, and it will download everything on your phone, and then they analyze it. And what they're looking for is for messages, articles, written things that are talking about the Uyghurs, right? So they want to know that if you're in there for the Uyghurs. So China will literally force you to download a virus if you go into that region. So don't do that. If you're planning on doing it, don't. Another thing too, I mean, with the technology stuff, I mean, China is just, end of the world, just ridiculous dystopian novels. Don't they have
like that Black Mirror level rating system?
Yes. So they have and it's been a while since I read up on this, but they have a social credit system that's based off of facial recognition. God, I can speak. And you basically have social credit that the government kind of controls, right? So I believe it was supposed to be something like where if you do a good deed, your social credit goes up and that kind of stuff like that. But it's really just, like if you write a bad article about, people in Beijing, your social credit's going down, right? So it's just
banned from like using the train, public transportation.
Right. Yeah. It's insane. They also
there's a crazy movie out there. I forget the name of it now, but it's all based on social credit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bad idea. I don't know if anybody thinks it's a good idea, but that's not really something you want to dabble with. Additionally, on the on the tech sector front, so this is where I have some expertise. So China and the United States are actually engaged in a war right now. It's a cyber war, and you might not take it seriously, but I mean, China is actively. So a little bit of background. So how this works is all the major nation states that can afford state-sponsored hacking, everybody's trying to get a foothold into each other's electric grids, into their military developers, defense contractors. All of the nations are doing that, including ours right now. So I actually pulled this stat from one of the systems that I have that monitors these things. There's 47 known state-sponsored hacking groups in China, and then 46 of which are focused on espionage. So there's 46 independent groups that we know of that are sponsored by the Chinese state, as in they're affiliated with the army usually, and they are actively trying to get a foothold into our electrical grid so that they can bring us all down at once if they need to. They're trying to steal our military secrets. They're trying to steal any government data that they can. It's active, it's ongoing, it is happening right now.
And 46 is nothing. I bet there's thousands. We're talking about a country of billions of people. There's got to be more than 46.
Well, that's 40. Remember, that's 46 groups. right?
Yeah,
And the groups can be large. I mean, I'm actually not sure. There could be maybe 100 people in that group.
Oh yeah,
And these are well funded. But I mean, I know one of them that was taken down recently. It did just have 5 people in it. But so
I mean, I don't think we should act like we don't also have these things going on, right?
We do.
Yeah.
But once again, like and that's one of those things. Like you have to be like, like at the end of the day, you have to be like, we are the good guys. And you don't have to say we're good. You just like, we're better than China at this point. Like I can say we don't have Uyghurs in concentration camps and we're not trying to brainwash mass parts of the population. We're a constitutional republic that's generally democratic. We have our problems, but we are way better than China.
We do have children in deportation camps that have been dying.
Which I would love to talk about and why it's not the same thing.
It's not the same thing, but it's pretty bad.
It's not desirable. I'll agree with you there. And then we can part ways.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about who's doing it and all of that, but you know, I try and always pull myself back and look at things from a 30,000 foot view, and they think they're right, and we think we're right, and we're both doing the same things to hold that power.
They are wrong. They have a million Uyghur Muslims.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you that they're wrong at all. I do think that they are, and I think if you know, to look at this another way, if you look at what we're doing right now as a country, 20 years from now, we're going to say we're wrong about a lot of things. So it just, I wish people could pull back and look at stuff though and stop. It's a utopian thought, right? But the only point I was trying to make is we are definitely also trying to get into their systems, trying to make sure that we can take out their power grid if necessary, those types of things. It's not like we're peaceful and passive is the only thing I was trying to point out.
I think what it comes to is like, you know, we definitely, I agree. Like I'm not this like, I love this country. I'm not this crazy nationalist person and I'm going to call it our flaws, but at the end of the day, I don't want our power grid getting like shut down. So if that means like us having hacking groups to like combat China, then it's like, all right, you know, at some point I got to be like, yeah, they're doing it and we're doing it, but like we're going to keep doing it too.
Yeah. Well, so that's all. So there's kind of like
we should keep doing it.
There.
I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. If we don't do it and they do, then you know, we're up a creek.
Right. We kind of like we did kind of dip into like another conversation there.
What we need is aliens.
What?
We need aliens to attack us so that we can all be friends.
That's true. Yeah. But
we need aliens.
That's the only way, man. It's the only way. It's like either aliens or like controlled zombies.
Subterranean
or
creatures.
X-Men. I mean, if you have mutants, I bet Trump would be like, we need to stop the mutants.
Oh, stop it.
You know it, dude. You can't tell me. You can't tell me otherwise.
No, I mean, the conservative sure will. All right, let me show you this real quick. I don't really need to show it so much, but whatever. Here it is. So China actually more
CNN?
What? What? would you say?
When did you start reading CNN?
Bro, I pull up all kinds of articles everywhere.
Isn't that blasphemy for you? Dude, if your crew sees you reading CNN, you're out.
You got to go cleanse yourself in some actual Fox.
There's a cleansing ritual.
Duh. Get baptized in Fox tears.
In fire. Yeah, I have to burn my.
Our producer said he's not your friend anymore.
I explicitly am referring to who's that guy who has a very punchable face?
Nate.
No, the guy at Fox.
You can't use
Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson?
Yeah, Tucker Carlson. You gotta go bathe in tears.
Tucker Carlson used to have a punchable face. Now he's lost a lot of weight. Now you hurt your hand on that.
Tucker Carlson's tears to like regain your Fox privileges.
All right. Hold on. All right, let me just make this point real quick. So there is actually an imbalance, right? When we're talking about like what are we doing to them versus what are they doing to us? So China is actually just a massive theft of intellectual property. Like that is so most of their espionage is actually pointed at that. So this article that I bring up, I don't think it really covers the most of it, but So total theft of U.S. trade secrets accounts for anywhere from 180 billion to 540 billion a year per year, according to the Commission of Theft for American Intellectual Property. And then China accounts for most of that, right? So that's not all China, but that is mostly China. So, I mean, we're losing a whole bunch of technological advantages, revenues based off of lost intellectual property. Like, it's disgusting. I mean, they get in. So, I mean, their big thing right now, and the big thing in the cybersecurity world right now, is you get into a company, you exfiltrate all their secrets out the back end, and then you just lock all the computers down with ransomware. So, and that's actively going on right now, and it's a war that's happening behind the scenes. And I was actually kind of proud of Trump for calling that out. Unless you were listening for it, you probably didn't really hear it, but he did mention it. So,
yeah, it's important, and I actually think it's more dangerous than some people will make it out to be, because unlike the U.S., if they go and steal some information from Company A and Company B, Company A and Company B weren't working together and couldn't combine that information, whereas China is stealing it for, the motherland, right? Like they have all of it and can use it in conjunction with each other, right? They're not limited by these separations of powers of corporations, and so by being able to share that information, I think they could overstep quickly our technological advancements if they're able to really take advantage of it fully. So it's a huge issue. And like I said before, I think technology is the future, not people. People are going to become a burden on economies at some point. It's not, I mean, quote unquote, right? It's people you have to feed and supply. Like, it's going to be faster to have automated machines, farming, harvesting, doing all of these things that we currently do manually. It's going to be faster to have automated factories building all these products. And so, you have to have consumers for these things, but like, people have to find ways that they're going to have to be productive. And I'm not talking 5 years from now, but 20, 40, 50 years from now.
I don't think it's going to be a problem.
And it's been moving. It's been moving that way, dude. Haven't you ever watched the movie WALL-E? That's what's going to happen. We're all going to be living like WALL-E.
Despite the people in the early 1900s that are like, these kids aren't going to know how to write on a chalkboard because now they have paper. This is horrible.
The kids. I mean, kids these days don't know how to write cursive because nobody teaches it anymore, right? Like, exactly. But that's the point I'm making. Like, these things are happening. They are changing. I don't know how to fucking farm. Do you know how to grow a plant? Like, I mean,
put a seed,
right? Like, we don't know these things as a majority of people used to. We don't need to.
All right, Chris, go ahead, and then I want to finish up China real quick, and then maybe we can get to abortion.
Okay, so we're talking about abortion. I mean, the reality is a bit more complex than that. The idea of automating is also super freaking expensive. Like, and it's not going to be a long time until it's the other way. So it's kind of like right now, a lot of things could be automated, but it's like there's no profit margin on it because it's like how much it actually costs to automate. And so, yeah, you're right. Eventually, these things are going to become more affordable and cost-effective and manageable and implementable. But as of right now, and at least for the next 60, 70 years, it's not going to happen. I mean,
no way. Dude, how much were computers in the 80s? Like, nobody had personal computers in the 80s because they were too expensive. And now you have something that's 100 million times as powerful in your pocket, and almost every single person has one. That was 40 years ago.
But it hasn't taken any jobs away. It's just improved their jobs.
Huh?
So it hasn't, in jobs that have been taken away, have simply not, it hasn't been like a net takeaway. It's like, yes, we lost a lot of banking jobs, but at the same time, there's creation of X, Y, and Z. So
now, all those people that used to plug telephone wires in and out of slots to connect people, that is now automated, that job didn't disappear?
No, the job disappeared. Those people are still working, though.
Sam, I understand. There's the people find other jobs, but jobs were lost, right? Like, specific jobs are lost.
My point is that when jobs are lost, there is, and this is actually, this is left or right depending on what's sector you're talking about in the industry. But when a job goes out of style, those people move into something else. Right. So you can tell this because there aren't large swaths of people today who are sitting around London wishing that they had a cabbie to drive, but that industry went out of business 200 years ago because nobody has horses in London anymore. Like, those people are doing other things because the economy expands to accommodate them and different jobs, and they become available for this and they become available for that. Like, the market flexes to take in an influx of people who just
eventually we're going to see, not right now, and that's not what's happening. Eventually we'll see a point where, yes, automation finally tackles and hurts the economy because in terms of actual employment, because of the age old of AI. It's not going to happen anytime soon.
It will happen soon. We haven't seen it. A technology come out that has been strong enough yet to take over a large enough portion of jobs. It's been small sections of jobs, one at a time, and those people have had the opportunity, and there have been other places for them to go.
Dude, entire industries keep going under. Entire industries keep going under, and
the industry itself goes under. The industry itself goes under, but the underlying roles do not, right? You still have a secretary at another job. You still have an engineer at another job. You still have a CEO of another job. I'm talking about, we have a massive amount of people in this country that work service, right? Food service or otherwise in retail. And those, you're already seeing those jobs being automated somewhat, right? Fast food checkout lines. You go to Walmart, you have that screen. You can just swipe and pay. You go to the grocery store, you check yourself out. Now we're coming up with self-scan. You don't even check out at the line. You just scan it as you throw it in your bag or your cart.
Tim, I understand all this. Why was unemployment just at 3% if we're automating everybody out of jobs?
I'm not saying we're there yet.
But
I'm saying we're seeing the beginning of it.
So you're giving the exact kind of reasoning that people will be giving in 10 years and in 20 years and in 30 years. They will be saying the exact same kinds of thing that you're saying. They're saying, hey, there's this job that I know that used to exist. It doesn't exist anymore. This tells me that in the future, whole industries are going to go out and people won't be able to find work. And it's just that same argument that you're using has been used since the 1800s. When whole sorts of, like, when the cotton gin was invented, like that kind of thing, like whole revolutions to industries. Again, those industries, and we're kind of getting off topic a bit from China, but those industries,
like when you invented the cotton gin, that affected a single industry, right? It's not like people didn't have to go
that's how the economy shifts a single industry at a time.
And that's what I'm saying is AI and automation isn't going to hit a single industry. It's going to hit industries across the board, right? And at the same time.
My argument is that, when that technology exists, it's so expensive to implement that, it actually, in places like China, it's probably more beneficial than, instead of spending a bunch of money to create technology or implement a technology that can automate, probably more cost effective to just keep a couple million people still working slave labor. Why would you
look? I hope I'm wrong, but I really think.
Why would you pay a couple $1 billion to automate every industry when you can just not pay anything and have slaves?
I hope I'm wrong, but we have never seen as fast as automation is going to take over a change in 30% of the workforce, and that's what we're seeing.
One day I'm gonna freaking run for office, and someone's gonna clip that one line.
I know. Yeah. Why don't we just keep everyone on slaves?
But no, what I'm saying is that.
Dude, by the time you run for office, it's gonna be deep faked anyway, so you're fine.
I know. People. Oh, I'm gonna be so deep faked. It's gonna be like my whole life's gonna be deep faked. But no,
this whole thing is deep fake. We're not actually here right now.
No, I'm not. This is AI speaking.
Yep.
No, slavery is wrong.
Producer Scotty. That's it. It's him. It's him sitting here with pre-recorded models. That's it. So you guys are getting duped. Okay. All right. Okay, guys. Let me do the last little China bit that I have, and then we got to do abortion for the last half hour. All in favor?
We can power through. We just gotta be conscious for our viewers and ourselves to make sure
AI is gonna take over.
Yeah, AI is gonna take over. All right, I just wanted to share that I have this right here. This is 30 seconds into debate and chill. There's him. China. Love it. I love this meme. This is my favorite meme ever. Anyways, okay. So last little bit that I have, this is where I was like saying I have expertise and then I have experience. So I have expertise in the cybersecurity stuff. I have experience in the South China Sea issue, right? So while China's doing all of this other crazy stuff, and we honestly kind of just dipped into it. I mean, the Uyghurs are the most egregious thing. There's a one-child policy. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff. China's also actually sort of militarily expanding. It's pushing itself out. It's pushing its borders out. It's doing its best to subjugate the people that are within its borders. It's taking Mongolia. It's doing kind of the same thing that Mao was doing, where it's repurposing all the people. But in the South China Sea specifically, when I was in the Navy, we were doing sailing operations that were freedom of navigation. And the reason that we were doing that is because a little bit of background here. So when your country owns territory that abuts an ocean, your territory extends 2 nautical miles away from the shoreline, right? So people can't sail within that unless they're for your country, right? So China can't sail boats within 2 nautical miles of the United States, and vice versa. So what China's been doing is there are coral reefs or small sandbars that are in the South China Sea, and the South China Sea is very heavily navigated by shipping lanes. And what China is doing is they're building artificial islands on top of those, and they're saying that this is our territory. And what they're doing by doing that is they're extending their territory 2 nautical miles away from these artificial islands, and they are artificially choking. They're choking navigation, or like they can do a whole bunch of things with that. They're putting military bases on them, and a whole bunch of stuff like that. So when I was in the South China Sea, we were doing freedom of navigation acts. We're saying, hey, these are artificial islands. We're gonna come right up next to them. We're gonna scooch right on by because this is not legal. And an international court actually ruled that this was illegal. So I guess so. That's sort of my last point right there. It's kind of interesting. I have some experience with that. China's
get some big dredge ships out there and just start sucking all the stuff out from underneath it.
Yeah, like we're not touching you, but we're gonna suck all the sand like right over here so that your island starts.
Yeah, just get some like UN funding, send out a big sucker machine.
Right.
You probably only have to just do it straight down the middle. Everything will fall in and collapse.
Yeah. So I mean, straight up, an international court ruled against them, and they're like, we don't recognize your authority, even though they're literally signed on to them. Okay, I guess you're just going to be dicks about it. But okay. All right, that's all we had on China. So don't sleep on it, everybody. Remember this. They are honestly the Chinese problem is something that should get, I would say, more attention than domestic politics. But here we go. We're going to go talk about domestic politics now.
One thing on China, I used to hear that they have so many people that we could never win. Like, we don't have enough bullets. I looked into it. We have plenty enough bullets.
We have plenty.
We also don't want to murder billions of people. That's what we're saying here. We're not
like right-wing rhetoric, Tim. What do you? That's not right-wing talk.
I was just trying to make a joke.
Okay.
Deep right-wing rhetoric.
All right, so we're gonna swerve. Okay, we're gonna pivot. We're gonna go into abortion now, and I just want to say, none of us are women. Even though I hate that argument, I get it. We're going to have guests on eventually. I do want to have guests on, and we'll figure that out eventually. Just technically behind the scenes, it's not that easy. So eventually we'll do that stuff, even though I believe that if you can rationalize your position, you can do it well. You don't necessarily need to have everybody represented, that kind of stuff. I know a lot of people disagree with that. Chris might disagree with that, but...
Chris, you disappeared.
I do disagree with that.
No, you disappeared is what I'm saying. You disappeared.
Yeah, to be completely honest, I needed a pillow to sit on because I'm sitting on a very hardwood chair right now, and I am uncomfortable.
You purposefully disappeared. All good.
Okay, and then what I was going to say is, all right, let's start with Tim, because Tim says that he has an argument that will shut down the entire abortion debate in the first 3 minutes.
So I sort of said that, but the comment I made to Nathan ahead of time was that this is the most well-put, succinct comment that I've heard from a politician in regards to this, and it is very hard to argue against. It's actually Pete Buttigieg. in a conversation he was having with Chris Wallace back in 2019 at some point. So Chris Wallace asked Pete Buttigieg, at any point in a pregnancy, should there be a limit to a woman's right to an abortion? And Pete's response, and I'm just going to read it, so bear with me here, is, the dialogue has gotten so caught up in where you draw the line. I trust women to draw the line, he said, cutting straight through the conservative framing. Get back to his quote. Hold on. These hypotheticals are set up to provoke a strong emotional reaction. Then Wallace shot back and said the statistic is that 6,000 women a year get an abortion in a third trimester. And Buttigieg quickly contextualized by saying, that's right, and that represents less than 1% of cases a year. So let's put ourselves in the shoes of women in that situation. Again, talking about late third trimester abortions.
Wait, I thought we didn't want emotional arguments.
Let's hear the quote.
Hold on.
Sorry.
If it's that late in your pregnancy, that means almost by definition you've been expecting to carry it to term. Buttigieg says, we're talking about women who have perhaps chosen the name of the baby, women who have purchased a crib, families that then get the most devastating medical news of their lifetime. Something about the health or the life of the mother that forces them to make an impossible, unthinkable choice. That decision is not going to be made any better medically or morally because the government is dictating how that decision should be made. And I 100% agree with this point that when most people are talking about abortion, they're not talking about the first couple weeks, the first trimester, although there are people that draw the line ahead of that. Most people draw the line somewhere in the middle to late stages of pregnancy. And that's where all of the heated debates come up because, I've mentioned it before, my token far-right friend, when we talk about it, he always talks about these abortions where the doctors go in and literally are cutting the baby to pieces and pulling out arms and legs separately because the baby's too big to get out any other way, right? And that's the type of emotional punch in the gut that, obviously nobody wants that. But the people that have carried the baby to that term, one, is a very small subset of the total abortion, so 1% a year. And of those 1%, the vast, vast majority of them are doing it for some medical reason. It's not that they just up and decided they didn't want the baby anymore. And why is the government, in my opinion, I think Buttigieg puts it perfectly, right? Like, that decision is such a massive decision for them to make that having, legal and government rules around it dictating what they can and can't do doesn't make it any better or easier.
Yeah, but that's
so my stance really is that they should get to decide on their own.
Oh, he just got cut off.
Oh no!
Hold on, let me.
I was gonna say the deep cookie man.
Holy cow! I was like, wow, he actually stopped talking.
Tim, you there, buddy?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Eddie?
Yeah, you're back.
So your point was what?
I don't know where I cut off. Sorry.
Well, I think you were literally saying. So my point was, fact check me, people.
I guess my point is I don't think that the government getting involved makes things any better, and that that we shouldn't be imposing our morals on in this particular case on other people. I think people should be able to decide for themselves when it comes to their health.
All right, Chris, you want to take it?
Yeah, I saw a similar quote, and I wholeheartedly agree. I think that it comes down to that. On the moral argument, it's like women have to have the right to choose. I mean, I would hope that the man and the woman in the situation are choosing, unless the circumstances don't allow for that, such as if the woman was a sexual assault survivor. In that case, then obviously the woman has every right to choose this. I realize that sometimes you have these complications, that 1% where it's like late term abortions require, the baby's a bit more developed, but typically, almost always, you don't have people just. This is not a fun procedure. Like, I'm a dude, but I can only imagine it's not an enjoyable thing. It's not something you want to put yourself through, right? So these are people that are like, if they're really going through with a late term abortion, it's because of a major health complication. Like, someone's life is at risk. I'm not here for and also just the fact of the matter is there's a Supreme Court case that's decided this. And obviously, yes, we know these things can be overturned, but it's been put into law. Like, let's respect this. Finally, where I disagree, these are the only places I disagree. I get very concerned about things. I believe this happened in Sweden, where Sweden, I remember it was like 7 years ago this came out. I was still in college, in undergrad. And I remember 3 years ago, oh my gosh, 7 years ago was high school, not that old. I remember like there was some sort of article that came out and it was like, Sweden has 0% population with Down syndrome. I'm like, oh, that's a good thing. I'm like, wait a minute. They're really aborting people that are identified as having Down syndrome before they're ever born. I have problems with that. I don't think we should be playing God at that level. Like if we look at the genetics of somebody and we see, okay, this kid is going to have autism or Down syndrome or some. Now, if there's a severe defect where, like, the baby's going to be born and be dying in like a month because of like some crazy thing. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I can't say when that is, but I think it's not right to be like, well, the kid's not going to be born Aryan, so let's take him out. So as our genetic knowledge becomes stronger, I am fearful of this idea of genetic combing.
Right. CRISPR.
That's something I'm generally afraid of. And finally, also speaking, no, that's it. That's the only thing I disagree with on. That's the only thing I'd be against. Otherwise, I mean, women's right to choose, like, it's got to be open-ended. I don't think in the first, trimester or so, the baby is not a baby. It's just a bunch of cells kind of being developed. I think where it becomes philosophically difficult to realize, like, those late-term abortion things, but people are not getting an abortion the day before pregnancy. That's not happening.
So then you're okay with it being outlawed, right? Since it doesn't happen?
Yeah, sure. If it's like a day before birth, you probably shouldn't be like.
Okay, there's a little bit of common ground there. Okay, so all right, let me take my turn then. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna sort of embody the right a little bit more than I feel. I'm actually probably like, for me, a lot of these lines are arbitrary, and so if I were to be forced to give a line, I would say anything past the first trimester I don't want aborted. But the problem is that that's so arbitrary. I don't even know how to make that a law necessarily and how to be exact about that. That is honestly mostly just my feeling. But so as far as the government intervention you think that the government doesn't have a job intervening in this? Let me ask you something. Does the government have a job intervening in murder?
Once again, so we've talked about this before, and so. There's a lot more that I wanted to say that we've actually talked about before, but I was trying to give respect to everyone to let everyone talk. So my biggest thing for this is that it isn't purely about the baby. It's also that person's health, right?
Hold on. Let me just stop you right there. The vast majority of people that I am aware of, and I could be wrong about this, but the vast majority of people that I'm aware of do not care about the argument about for the mother's health. Sure, if it's for the mother's health, most people are on board with the abortion.
Yeah, so, but those people all... No. Let me finish, because those people all say, if there's a known issue, if there's a known health defect or health complication, then obviously she can make that decision. I'm talking about just in general, right? Giving birth, even if there's no known health complications, is dangerous. Mothers still die. Right? It's still a life-threatening thing to do. And so to say simply that, you had sex, deal with the consequences of having to put your life at risk because of some moral obligation that you have to let this baby grow is, in my mind, ridiculous. And I go back to the point of, like, if you say it's a life, well, if they would have just decided not to have sex that night, that life wouldn't exist either. Like, it's a life and it's a baby, and I do value life, but at the same time, like, where do you go back and draw the line of saying that life wouldn't have existed, right? And so that kind of goes back to my argument on contraception, where it's like, well, if you wrap it or just don't have sex, in both cases the baby's not there, right? So it's kind of like, talking out of both sides of your mouth if you're Christian and saying you have to wait till marriage. How many less lives are brought into this world because they waited?
So I just want to be Christians have the most. Well, I'm sorry, all of the conservatives, the religious people who believe in a soul, have the most consistent position, unless it's childbirth. They say at conception it is a human being and it's a life. That's very consistent. You know what I'm saying? Like everything else after that.
I know, but I was making the comment on anti-contraceptive.
Yeah.
Right. So Catholics historically have not allowed contraception. You can't wear a condom. You can't take birth control. You can't do those types of things. Yeah. Right. I
actually don't know. I don't know much about that.
So that is preventing. If you don't have sex or you use contraception, it's the same thing. It's preventing the event from ever happening. But that's not really the abortion argument, right? And please don't take it. When we had this conversation before, I told you kind of my personal story, and I don't mind saying it on stream. My wife and I had some complications when we were first trying to have kids. We had a couple miscarriages, and then we were doing the testing as we were going through the pregnancies to see if the kids had any genetic issues. Down syndrome being an example, and others that they can test for. And they also test for sex, if it's a male boy and all that, or male or female and all that stuff. And our tests kept coming back inconclusive. And so on our third try, we had 2 miscarriages. On our third try, we had the test come back, and it still came back inconclusive. And we were talking to the doctor about it. And she said, the only thing the next step to really be able to get this data is to do, I think it's called an amniocentesis, where they take a needle basically and they stick it into the sac and actually take a sample from the fetus and then analyze that, rather than doing it through the mother's blood. And we had to make a decision on that. And not to get into too much detail on the data of it, right? I asked what risk does it increase, and right. What's the likelihood that it causes another miscarriage, or vice versa? And they couldn't give us clear information on that, but not to get into that. At the end of the day, me and my wife had to sit down and ask each other, like, why do we want this data? If it comes back and says that the kid has Down syndrome, what are we going to do? And for us at that time, abortion was definitely on the table. Not to say that we had decided to do it, but we both were open with each other and saying, yeah, let's talk about that. That's definitely something we may want to do, right? And we both were open with each other. Like, do we want to live the 18, more than 18 years, however many years of our life, taking care of a child and having to do that? And that's a very big thing to take on. And so we weren't sure if we would want to do that or not. So abortion was on the table. At the end of the day, we decided not to do the amniocentesis, because if she would have had another miscarriage, I don't think we could have lived with ourselves not knowing if we caused it or not by doing that procedure. And at the end of the day, we didn't know if it would actually give us a different decision. Like, yeah, okay, now we know it's a boy, or now we know it's a girl, and now we know it does or doesn't have Down syndrome. Does that really change anything? And we weren't really sure. We were leaning towards we probably wouldn't abort anyway, partially because we had such complications in having a child. And I can tell you now, after having 2 children, there's no way in hell I would ever have an abortion, ever, no matter what the data came back. But that's after having kids and after seeing and feeling what it's like to have kids. And if you haven't gone through that and you don't know that, it's hard to say exactly how you're going to feel, or to, I don't know, to really feel as strongly as you would if you've actually had a kid. Before having kids, there was nothing more important in this world than myself, right? I loved my wife. I would do anything for her. I love my family, everything. But at the end of the day, if you really look at yourself hard, for most people, you are the most valuable thing in the world to yourself, right? And I can hear the argument of somebody saying, well, I love my wife more than I love myself or my spouse or whatever. And that's acceptable. I think that there's people like that too. For me, that wasn't how my brain works, but I can honestly say that is not the case anymore. It changed instantly the day that my sons were born.
So do you think this argument is going to skew left as people have less and less kids? So for example,
yes.
So you see what I'm saying? So the more people that don't have kids and don't have your experience, you think they're going to sort of stay a little bit further left on the abortion argument?
I think so, but my stance hasn't changed a lot from the legality of it. I still think that it should be their decision, the husband and the wife, and ultimately the female. But
right, so you personally disagree, but you're being libertarian on it, essentially.
Yeah, my personal belief is let people live their lives, and I do have obviously you can't go and murder someone, and the reason. If it was a baby growing in a test tube or something and someone walked up and broke the test tube and killed it, to me, that would be murder. But in this case where it actually does affect that person's life and you are putting their life at risk, and it's not an insignificant amount of people that die from childbirth with having no other complications. Do what?
810 women died in childbirth last year. Or is it?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the numbers are. I know that it's not a totally insignificant number.
14, and per 10,000. I'm sorry, 14 per 100,000.
Oh, okay.
So it's not significant.
It's still a lot.
It's
zero.
It's not. It's if you were to take the average football stadium, every time you go to a football game, you just randomly shoot somebody there, right? Would you say a lot of people would probably still go to the football games?
Right, but you're talking about having a kid here.
Well, I understand, but if they didn't mean to, right? What if they just had sex and accidentally got pregnant, and now she has a 1 in 25, less than that, 1 in 10,000 chance of dying, right? Because they had sex and the condom broke, or they didn't take the precautions, they were too drunk, right? Like,
look, I don't know. This is my male privilege coming through, but be brave. I don't know.
Yeah, okay. I think if you want, and that's why I say it's got to be their decision, because it's their life. It's not just a baby. And like I said, if it was a baby in a test tube, or there was absolutely no way that it was going to impact the mother's life, and then even second to that, outside of the fact that you may die or not, it completely changes the woman's body and hormones and other things. It's a massive impact on them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. There doesn't
right, and so you hear the argument,
and then expands back out again. Like, they have massive physiological changes.
Yeah, massive changes, and you hear people talk about, like, well, just have it and give it up for adoption. Like, well, that's very difficult to do. I mean, we're genetically programmed to love and want to take care of our children, so that's a massive undertaking to convince somebody to do that. And the second to that, even if they do that, their whole entire body is completely different. Their physiology is different. Their mental state's different. Like, okay. I can attest to baby brain and a lot of these other things that people talk about with pregnant women and then mothers. Like, these things are real, and making some.
I'm going to need you to back off that.
And telling somebody that they have to do these things because you believe it to be right is something that I don't subscribe to. Something I don't subscribe to.
Yeah, but
we all believe that.
I think that you do believe that morality can be enforced by law. You do.
I agree that to some extent, but not to the extent of abortion.
With this particular moral.
So I think where it comes down to this is Carolyn, my girlfriend, soon to be fiance, is in the same room. So sometimes she live texts me as this is going on, and her and I are in perfect agreement. And I really our philosophies aligned. It comes down to, like, it may not be something we would do, right? I don't know what I would do in that situation, but the reality is that it may not be something we do, but we don't get to decide what other people get to do with their bodies because of our own beliefs. I mean, the reality is...
We can, though. To both of you and to everybody who's listening, we control other people's body with the law all the time. I keep going to this...
On murder, right? But then this is where it's nebulous. It's like, I don't think abortion's murder. I think there's overwhelming scientific community shows, like, in that first trimester, it is a bunch of cells. It's not like God did not... You're not imbued with a spirit like a couple cells, right? Like, I think that's where it comes in. Now, when we get to later down the path, it's like, again, maybe we can have, and there is, obviously there's states like New York that are way more, progressive, I guess, liberal on this. There's way more liberal policies, but for the most part, I'm not against some legislation that says, late-term abortions, there needs to be like some severe, significant like things that are going on, like it has to go under some sort of review from doctors or whatnot. Sure, I'm fair for that. But for the most part, especially that first trimester, it's like, it's not. It's just a bunch of cells. It's not murder.
Right. And look, I actually, like I said, I agree with you. Right. I do. Like I said, if I had to draw an arbitrary line in the sand, which like everything except for conception and birth is kind of an arbitrary line. It's for me, it's probably first trimester is acceptable. The rest of it probably not so much. But I mean, to the conservatives' point, the sanctity of life, right? So when we talk about the soul is also philosophically synonymous with the spark of life, the spark of divinity. It's like, when do you consider that a person, philosophically speaking, right? And this is the question.
Well, I mean, if you want to talk on the conservative side, valuing life, they sure don't value life if a police officer feels that their life's threatened. But if a mother feels her life may be threatened, she's not allowed to have an abortion. I mean, it's the same thing, right? Like, to protect your own life, you're allowed to do whatever you want.
Did I not say that most people are okay with the abortion if the mother's life is in danger?
Yeah. I said feels like, right? Like,
I don't care about feels
an officer only has to say, I felt threatened, I felt like my life was in danger, and they pretty much have fair game. They have to have some sort of evidence, but the evidence is there.
You're bringing a whole other episode into this one that
it's the exact same thing. If the mothers fear for their life, which that's
apples and alien oranges.
It's not at all. If a mother is afraid for her life, that by continuing through this, that she may die. And you even said
the difference is that the fetus is innocent.
Yeah, there's been innocent people killed by police too.
I'm aware, and in that case, it's incorrect.
But the only point I'm making is that the right stands up for that murder, but then they're completely against the murder.
That's not
abortion.
Really a person, man.
What's not a person?
Like I like to tell everybody, the world is not as interesting as you think there is. I mean, there are a bunch of crazy conservatives that probably believe the exact same thing you're saying, but that's not the platform. That's not what people believe, right? Most people are realistic, right? When most people see a bad cop shoot, they call it out as a bad cop shoot. When most people see a late-term abortion that wasn't threatening the mother's life, they say, well, that was kind of gross. I mean, that thing could have lived outside of the womb. You just killed a baby. You know what I'm saying? Like, most people are pretty reasonable, man.
I understand that, and I agree. And I'm just trying to share the idea that these two points of view aren't that far apart from each other, although that they're very separated in political discussion, right? Like, saying somebody is justified in killing another human being because they fear for their life, and then saying that this person isn't justified in killing a human being because she fears for her life, is contradictory. That's the point I'm trying to make. I'm not trying to say they're equal, and I'm not trying to say that in any given instance this is equal to that. I'm not trying to say the two lives are equal to each other, right? An already living, breathing, been alive for however long person and a fetus that it hasn't even been born yet. They're completely different, and how you value them is different. But those two points of logic to me are very similar.
There's so many different things to consider there, right? If somebody fears for their life, it's generally because there's an aggressor. And I do want to. What's going on there, Chris?
It's an alien orange.
Hey, yeah. See, that's what you're talking about right there. That's cops killing people because they're fearing for their life.
No, you're not going to use my alien orange to back up your like.
I can point to it. That's it. That's. See, my point is proved because you put that alien orange up there.
The alien orange is never coming back. No, I mean, I think where it just comes to is the reality is there's one more major argument we got to talk about right now is and maybe you can combat this by saying this is not a religious argument. It's more just like an conception argument. But I feel like the point of like, and I'm saying this as someone who's Christian. I know 99% of people who are in my that type of community are disagree with me on this, and so be it. I'm not going to conform, but the reality is that it is a religious argument a lot of times when we're talking about like, the conception is when like there's a spirit and all of that. It's like, all right, well also religiosity should stay out of politics. I truly, truly believe that, because in that same argument, I'm sure there's some other, I'm sure there's some dynamics in Islam or Buddhism that we would all be upset with if all of a sudden that started getting pushed in the Supreme Court and whatnot.
Well, no, I mean, from what I understand, Islam agrees with the Christians and the Jews on this particular point. The soul is imparted at conception.
You know what? The beautiful thing about our country is that if you're Muslim or Christian or Jewish and you're 15 and you get pregnant because you're in an abstinent-only state in the Bible Belt that doesn't teach you how babies are made, and one day you end up doing the baby-making thing, then like, all right, so be it. You're in a Christian community, boom, you're going to take care of the kid. But for everybody else who doesn't need to be Christian or Muslim or Jewish or Buddhist, they can act on their own free will. And I think and I don't think it's murder. I think that's where it comes down to. We're not talking about murder here.
Right. Okay. So let me say this then. So like to reaffirm, I'm bouncing back and forth between.
I'm just combating the ideology, not you.
No, I know. So I will agree with a lot of what you said, and then I'm even sympathetic to like say, okay, I'm not fundamentalist. Let me do this thing. So, but the question becomes, where do you draw that line? Because you have to, right? You either say conception, or you say birth, or you draw a line somewhere in there, right? And this is where it gets hard, right? And I think there's a lot of vitriol around this debate where people on the left think that the people on the right are trying to quote unquote control their bodies, when the right's just trying to save babies' lives that they think have souls.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, sort of like both ways. It's like on the right, you need to understand that these people don't subscribe to your religion and they don't believe that these babies have a soul. I get it. So even if you acknowledge both of those things, which I do, you end up at the spot where you need to draw a line. Where do you draw that line? How do you draw that line? And what significance does that line have? Right? And how do you convince other people that your line is a moral one and that's where you need to draw it?
Yeah.
For me particularly, we've had this talk. I'm very libertarian. I'm very much, unless you're having a direct impact on somebody else, I'm kind of a live and let live mentality.
Right, third trimester babies?
And so, yeah, well, I just crunched the numbers real quick and I looked them up. I mean, it's a 1 in 4,000 chance that you die if you're giving birth in this country.
I'm not seeing that.
You gave me those numbers. You said it was 26 per 100,000.
I said 14.
I Googled percent of women that die in childbirth, and the thing that popped up at the top.
In 2015, it was 14 per 100,000.
The first thing that pops up on Google, I Googled percent of women die in childbirth. It said 800 women in the U.S. die each year during pregnancy, and within 42 days after delivery. I'm assuming that means from the pregnancy. The estimated maternal mortality rate was 26.4 per 100,000 live births in 2015. That works out to be about 1 in 4,000. It's actually 1 in 3,000 and something. People die from if you're a female and you get pregnant, you have a 1 in 4,000 chance of dying. You have a 0.026% chance of dying, right? Which is what, like the death rate of COVID?
We should do a podcast on that because I'm not actually sure what the current death rate of COVID is. I know it's way down, but
it's definitely not an insignificant amount. And so, I mean, in a big portion of these deaths are unforeseen because most people, when they have foreseen complications, are able to get abortions right now. So most of these deaths are likely unforeseen complications.
Nobody here is pushing back against those abortions, those particular abortions.
The ones that are already happening. But I'm saying that these are like, if you ban abortions, then this death rate is going to go up, is what I'm saying.
No, it's
one last really important argument to make. I just want to clarify that I keep seeing, because I agree. I mean, I think, Tim, you made a really good point. It's like, if for whatever reason the the crazies ban abortions when it comes into the jeopardizing the mom's life, then yeah, we're probably going to see way more mom-related deaths and pregnancy. So we're obviously avoiding that. But one thing I do want to touch on before we wrap up, because I know we're getting towards like closing.
Oh yeah, we gotta.
Is something that I see a lot on the right that I've never understood is this attack against Planned Parenthood, dude. Like, because Planned Parenthood is not this like baby killing machine. Planned Parenthood provides a lot of reproductive health services, and also Planned Parenthood provides services to men and women. I've gone to Planned Parenthood before. Like, I'm on like DCF health insurance. I grew up on that because of being in foster care, and Planned Parenthood accepts my health insurance. And so there's been times that not even for like I needed to get my Gardasil shot because of like I have a weak immune system. So that's like I went to Planned Parenthood for that. You know what I mean? It's like people go there for breast cancer examinations.
All right, I can do that real quick. So first of all, a lot of conservatives do believe that it is almost primarily abortions. And I did see back in the day, like probably back in the 2016 fervor, I did actually see some videos where people were like, hey, we called all of these random Planned Parenthoods around the country and we asked for prenatal care and they said, we don't do that. We just do abortions here. Right. So regardless of whether that's true or not, which obviously in your case, you have a very strong anecdotal evidence that it's not true. So, and I would probably universalize that and say that the conservatives are probably mostly wrong about that. But the big problem that conservatives do have with Planned Parenthood is that it receives federal funding, right? Which means that their tax dollars, as people who believe that Planned Parenthood is killing babies, their tax dollars are going to that organization. And there's an argument there that, hey, we don't use those federal funding dollars for abortions, but that's stupid because funds are fungible, right? So if they had money over here, you could get money over there.
So on that same argument, it just, I see what they're saying. I do, because it's like, yeah, if 30% of your funding comes from the federal government, and even if you say that those funds don't go towards abortions and whatnot, like obviously if you just cut 30%,
yes.
It's not that the organization is going to shut down, but a lot of it is going to shut down. And I'm hiccuping, so don't cut me off. All right, cool. So one important thing that we need to talk about though, is it gets deeper.
A lot of funds go to stuff you don't agree with.
Exactly.
A lot of my funds are going to building a damn border wall that I don't agree with.
But even more deeply than that, like let's talk about because there's of course I disagree with like huge military spending, maybe someone really disagrees.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Camp, right? Maybe people really disagree for whatever reason. There's actual other humanitarian things we can talk about in that same argument. For-profit prisons receive federal funding. Why on earth do we provide funding to for-profit prisons? Why on earth are we subsidizing that?
I assume they do the job better than the state. That's probably why.
No,
but why is the state funding it? If it's for-profit, it should be funded solely by itself.
You're going to pay the local jail?
Yep.
It's a jail. I mean, so like, I see what you look. I see what you mean, but so to the conservatives, and once again, this is not me, right? This actually is not me. So I don't
use the inmates as slave labor to pay for themselves.
Talk to Kamala Harris about that.
They do, man. They do.
I'm just bringing things full circle here.
I know. Yeah. So, but the conservatives literally believe that their funds are going towards murder, right? So, like, they literally believe that 300 million souls a year, however many babies it is. Obviously, it's not that many, but what is it? 300,000.
Okay, so what about people that don't believe in capital punishment that live in states that do it? Their funds are going towards murder in their minds.
Yeah, and there's anti capital punishment activists, and there should be.
Yeah, I see why. I mean, I guess I imagine it's just one of those things that unfortunately that there's going to be a strong faction of conservatives that aren't going to change their mind. It's really just kind of like who has more people on their side type of argument. It's kind of like
there's some wisdom to that. I believe so. There's two things. I believe it's going to be a populist argument from now to the end of time. Like if you're going to win this argument, you need to be having babies. Unfortunately, people are aborting those babies that would eventually be so like all the pro-choice people are aborting the babies that would grow up to then be pro-choice. So you have a little bit of an issue there. But like I just want to reiterate and I'll actually have this be my closing point.
If that logic worked, there would be no pro-choice people left.
I mean, obviously I'm being a little hyperbolic there. So my big thing on this argument is that there's a lot of vitriol where there kind of shouldn't be. Like this is an easy thing to understand, right? Conservatives, do not listen to the people that are telling you the conservatives want to put hands on your body or control your body. And there's like a bunch of old white men who just want to control what women do with their bodies, right? We control what people do with their bodies all the time. Everybody, right? We say no. Yeah, exactly. That guy, right? I don't want that guy telling me what to do with my body, right? It's all that kind of rhetoric, and it's just like that's just absolutely not how they see it. They control, like, so number one, we control people all the time. We tell people to use their bodies all the time. We say no murdering, right? We do that, and everybody agrees with that, and that's a good thing. So the whole hands-on bodies argument is a little bit stupid there. Just like, don't listen to that. That's not how you should be looking at this. The conservatives genuinely believe that you're killing somebody. So if anybody should be outraged, it's them. But they should also understand that you do not share their morals. So like there should just be general understanding all around on this issue, I think.
Yeah.
And conclusions are going to be really hard to come to. So that's my bit.
I mean, I understand the point, and I agree 100% that it's going to be a populist issue because it's an emotional and personal issue. It's a moral issue. It's not an issue of logic or understanding, or just you don't have the knowledge that somebody else has, right? But I think there's a lot of hypocrisy and a lot of things that people don't look at from other angles. I mean, would you want the government coming in and telling you, and I know we do in some instances, but not as bad as it could be, this is how you have to raise your child, right? If you're not doing this right, we're going to take your kid away. And again, I know that we have some of that in place already, but generally it's for the extreme cases and very unfit parents. But like if I were to say, hey, you didn't teach your son that sex before marriage was improper, and he had sex with this girl, so we're taking him away from you, right? The government shouldn't be able to tell us how to believe on these types of things. And I think to me it isn't. To me it's at some point we are leaving the and I hate to say it this way, but the ownership and the raising of and the care of and everything of somebody's child up to them. And if these people do not wish to have a child and it's not born yet, then it's nobody else's job but theirs to determine if that child should be born or not. That's my view on it, really. And I generally think people should decide to have the baby. I am personally not going to be supporting an abortion in my own life, but I do support other people having the right to do so.
Reprehensible to kill a third-term baby?
I think it's terrible. I think I would hate myself for the rest of my life if I had done it before. If we had actually gone through with it and then had kids and like now what I've seen. But at the same time, like I don't think that. No.
Okay.
Excluding if you took away any health risk to the mother,
yes,
then I would say yes. Well, then I would be more towards saying yes, but I still would say it still impacts them for the rest of their life based on how their physiology and everything else changes. So then there's a conversation there, but I generally think that probably isn't enough for me to say that we shouldn't have any law. I think at that point I would say there would have to be a health risk involved. But right now I wouldn't want a law in place that says you have to have a known health risk, because the point I was trying to make before is most of the deaths that we have now aren't from known health risks. Those are people that have decided to take on the risk of having a child and died because of it. Not because, and it's not, most of those aren't the people that had a doctor say, hey, there's a 50-50 chance that you're going to die if you have this kid. Right? Most of those are going to be random deaths.
I want stats on that though.
So I will say this is you actually touched on a really cool topic a little bit. There's a huge maybe we can do a whole freaking sub podcast on this, but not to break the fourth wall in that conversation, but there is a huge there's a huge kind of growing movement that has gained some traction on this idea of the extreme provocative statement is abolishing child welfare. What it really is getting at, in the same way, like no one's trying to defund the police. It's more like we want to reallocate funds. Abolishing child welfare is, the history of child welfare. I'm not going to get into a huge lecture, but where child welfare in our country was first established, and this is not some leftist agenda. This is agreed upon by all people in the aisle. Child welfare is the one beautiful place where everybody gets around and like, yeah, we agree on this. But to kind of talk on this is that the orphan train was the very first government-run initiative on child welfare. And basically what the orphan train is poor whites and poor African American and poor black individuals in New York State were basically, their kids were separated from these families who were deemed unable to take care of their kids because of poverty, not even because of abuse, because of poverty. And they were then shipped down to southern states that were considered good families. And these kids would literally spend the rest of their lives working on farms, like as basically slave labor. Like it is one of the most horrific things that have happened in this country. And we don't talk about it, and it's pretty messed up. So nowadays we talk about like, all right, yeah, you know what? When we separate a family, that born kid, when we're talking about like the afterlife kind of thing, like the pro-life argument, like what do we do when kids are born? Do we separate families because they're too poor to take care of a kid? Is that grounds for termination? Or is it more like, all right, should we help this family first become like able to take care of their kid in the first place? And then if all else fails and they're still being abusive or abuse then occurs, well, yeah, sure, separation. But, if someone's just homeless, should we like separate their kid from them? Or what if we just found them a house? What if we just got them a job so we can pay for an apartment? Like, right? What if we just got them a job at an Amazon warehouse making whatever? And, seriously though, like that's actually right out of Trump's presidency. So anyone on the right that wants to, that doesn't sound so good. Well, that's actually the initiative that came out of Trump's presidency that's widely bipartisan and agreed upon. It's like the one thing that we love Trump for is like, yeah, we finally have family first legislated because it's a great idea. So there's some fun stuff.
All right. Well, it was a great conversation. We could go a long time on that. I had a great conversation tonight. I don't know about you guys. It's a fun time. I'm enjoying these podcasts a lot more. They seem to be coming a lot more naturally. And I appreciate everybody that's watching. I think it's just one tonight, but we're gonna be bumping things up here pretty soon. Hi, Mom. Hey, we're gonna be bumping things up here pretty soon. Tim is having his internet issues. He's going to get a landline dropped in there, and then he'll be back up and running just as better than 60
days. Up to 60 days. I'm working on trying to make that as fast as possible. And in the meantime, I'm going to try and find some other ways around it. See if I can do some of these from work. Use my mobile device as maybe a video source and just do audio through here. We have some technical difficulties to figure out there. So I'm going to do what I can to get back on here full bore, but until then, you'll just have to deal with some picture of something this week, Deadpool.
You're fine. Deadpool's great.
Much better than your ugly mug.
And when these do become podcasts, they won't even know the difference,
Yeah. All right. So that's it for us tonight. What's that, Chris? You saying something?
Yeah, I was going to say you should show up in a Deadpool costume next time you're live.
I had a Spider-Man costume when I was in the Navy. Not to get off topic, but I would run around the ship.
Navy.
We were on deployment. And I'd be like running through the ship and like hanging off the rafters and all that kind of shit. Young me is a very embarrassing person, actually, but I did have fun. So
I bet you can recruit some people to the military by sharing that story.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Go to the military and you get to be Spider-Man.
I would not do that to anybody. It is not worth it. It is not worth it. Okay, good night, everybody. Like, share, and subscribe if you thought this video was great and informative and amazing. And we love all of you. Good night.
Good night, guys.